Are we live streamed? Good to go? All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome, everyone. This is the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee for Tuesday, July the 12th. It's 12:30 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order. We have an agenda that has been published before us. Everyone had opportunity to peruse it. If there are no additions, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'm happy to move, we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Sally. We will take your motion up on that, and we need a seconder. I believe Councillor Jaguar's hand was up. That be it resolved that the agenda for the July 12th, 2022 meeting be approved as presented. All in favor?
Yes,
That is carried. Thank you. Next is the adoption of the minutes. This is from the June 24th meeting. Everyone has had opportunity, I hope, to peruse the minutes. If there are no errors or omissions, I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as printed and circulated. Madam Warden will move. Councillor Jaguar will second. Be it resolved that the minutes of the meeting held June the 24th, 2022 be adopted. All in favor?
yes,
Thank you. And that's carried. Remind committee members of disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. I'm not hearing any or seeing any. We have no delegations, so we're moving quickly on to briefings, which is 6.1, funding challenge for the town of Elmer regarding the Elmer Malahide Museum and Archives. And we're looking for, who's doing the presentation? Are you doing that, Jenna?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to members of the committee, the purpose of today's meeting is to consider a report that was deferred at the committee's last meeting. On May 24th, 2022, County Council received a funding challenge request from the town of Elmer to provide a donation to the Elmer Malahide Museum and Archives capital campaign. County Council referred this request to the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee for consideration under the Community Grant Program. It's important to note that currently the Community Grant Program is fully subscribed for 2022, and capital projects do not qualify under the current eligibility criteria. However, the committee could consider recommending that council provide additional funds for this ask. We are seeking direction from the committee with how they would like to proceed with this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Jenna. Any questions or comments from committee members? Donna, I would invite input from you as well. Sally as well. Any comments? Hearing none. Yes, Councillor Jaguar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can comment. I mean, yes, this is a worthwhile endeavor, but as Jenna pointed out, our program is already fully subscribed and it doesn't meet the eligibility criteria. So I'm afraid we would have to decline at this point.
I'm sorry, Ed, I was trying to get through, but had a hard time, so. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now, please.
All right, I was going to say, previously, while I've been on county council, we had a request for capital fund once before, and it was not done through the community improvement or the grant program. Can you hear me or not?
We are at the moment.
Okay.
Previous comments, no.
All right. I said we did give one capital grant in the past,
Yep.
and it was for $10,000, and it was not through the community grants program. It was to the Rodney Area Fairgrounds for a pavilion, toward their pavilion. It wasn't the full cost. So it's not.
Sorry, Sally, we lost you again. But until she comes back on, if I were to extend the conversation, I think what she's suggesting was that council prior found the fund somewhere if they wanted to do this, not through the community grants program. Is that a fair interpretation? So there was a mechanism out there and they did it in the past. That's really interesting. Can I muddy the waters and throw something out there? I'm the chair, I guess I will. The county does not have any ownership of this proposed asset. And given our recent discussions around giving out these kinds of capital grants, how would it be perceived from a bonusing perspective?
It's a very good question.
Thank you.
And we'd be happy to provide some follow-up information. I'm hesitant to comment, but my gut tells me, so my uninformed opinion at this time would be that this is a charitable endeavor. So perhaps different in that regard, though we would be seeking formal advice from our legal team in order to be factual there.
Okay, Sally has, just sorry to interrupt, has written in, this is a worthwhile project, believe a donation is warranted. Okay. Speaking to Councillor Giguère's comments earlier, he's suggesting that we're over.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear.
Okay, we're still having problems hearing you, Sally. As I was saying, going back to Councillor Giguère's comments, the program for 2022 is already subscribed to. And from our initial, observations, it may be ineligible from a criteria point of view, but that's not precluding council from doing whatever they wish to do with this. So I'm asking for some clarification, perhaps even a motion from this committee. Is it fair to say that the committee would recommend that we don't fund this from the capital grant program, since there's no funds there anyway?
The capital grant, sorry, Mr. Chair, can you clarify?
Well,
Don't have
we don't have a capital grant.
Right.
Right, but what I'm saying is, it doesn't fit the criterion for the community grants program?
So perhaps the budget committee would need to,
Perhaps, or throw it back at council and it's their discretion. Councillor Giguère or Councillor Martin has already pointed out, a previous council had granted a capital grant to, I thought it was Dutton, Dunwich, for their pavilion at Wallacestown.
There,
Yeah.
Do you remember that one? And I can't, I have a sneaking suspicion it was West Elgin.
there is no.
That was before we did an overhaul of the grants program itself
Yeah.
to exclude any capital investments. So at this point in time, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Please.
there is no funding avenue for the committee to provide funding for this request. I think council would be looking to the committee to provide a recommendation as to whether the committee recommends that county council direct that funds be sourced from the 2022 budget
Mhm.
to support this initiative, in which case I assume they would take your recommendation and direct staff to provide follow-up information about where that money may come from.
Thank you for that. But, yeah, Madam Warden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think we have to be clear on this. We don't have the funds, so it's out of our control in this particular group. If I recollect correctly, council directed it to this group already. So it's basically us turning it back to them again. They did not seem that interested, and I think that's why they didn't want to commit. They wanted this group to have the conversation. So I don't know, I'm not sure how we want to proceed, but I'm just kind of reiterating that council did want us to do something with this, I believe. Could be wrong.
I think you're right.
Mr. Chair, there's an additional comment from
Ah.
Councillor Martin.
Well, again, if I read Councillor Martin's comments, again, this would be entirely up to council to decide. Yes.
Mr. Chair, and I think Councillor Martin is referring to budget of 23.
Yeah.
And to that end, perhaps a recommendation from this committee could be to the Elmer Malahide Museum for a more fulsome proposal. When I compare to other entities or organizations who have come before council to seek support outside of, the culture or community grant process, I recall council asking specific questions about for sustainability of the organization, about operating costs, so before we would support a capital investment. And for example, we've received presentations from hospice and from other, very other worthwhile initiatives. And here, I think the overall information is minimal. And so perhaps the recommendation is to ask or invite the museum to submit a more fulsome proposal to be considered by council for the 23 budget. Perhaps considered by the budget committee for the 23 budget outside of the culture grant.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
Please do. I was about to raise a point here, but go ahead.
The point is that I believe it's a challenge from the town of Elmer.
Yes.
So it's got to happen fairly quickly. And so when you read the report, we're going to assist them through the town of Elmer, okay? So what we're doing is we're just putting out a challenge to the county, and I believe we did to Malahide as well, because we all are involved with that museum. It benefits the entire county. It is definitely Malahide and Elmer's museum. So I think it was a challenge from our council, and that they were just kind of looking to see if there were, any takers basically, and we would certainly match that donation. So if for instance, just being hypothetical, if this committee somehow could manage to put forward 10,000, let's just use that as a hypothetical number, Elmer would come forward with that additional 10,000 to match that. So I believe it's more of a challenge.
Yes. Yes. So, and your interpretation, Warden French, should be that this is more of an immediate need and needing an answer
I believe so.
rather than waiting for the 2020 budget process.
I think so.
Okay. Okay. So given that information, then Councillor Jiguer, what do you think? I mean, there are several options that this committee can come up with. We could deny the request. We could make a recommendation back to council that they either do or don't. We could suggest that it's beyond the funding envelope available from this committee at this point. Or, you know, and I agree with your comments, it's a worthwhile endeavor. Is it fit within the core business of the county? No, it doesn't, in my opinion. All right. So Counselor Martin has up here, if it has to happen quickly, she's happy to recommend we give them a $10,000 now and find room for it in the current budget. Well, for due process point of view, and we'll give Counselor Martin a chance here, is that a motion she wants to put forward? Because if she does, then we'll see if there's a seconder. If not, then we'll know where it goes from there. Delaney, I don't know if she's receiving us or not. Could you ask her to clarify if that's a motion she's putting on the floor? Okay. All right, there's a motion then, moved by Counselor Martin. To recommend that we give, to recommend the council to, I guess, provide them with a $10,000 grant and find it within the current budget. Now, we need a seconder for that. The dog doesn't count.
Oh, you can hear me now, can you?
Yeah, I could hear the dog.
Okay. It's not a grant, it's a donation is what I'm recommending.
Yes, I see that. Thank you for clarification. Yes, Counselor or Warden French.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see anything wrong with this. Actually, we've done our job. Council asked it to come back to this committee. The committee has come up with a resolution. We haven't approved it yet, but still, it's on the table. Like there's a chance it'll be on the table. We're talking about it right now. It goes back ultimately to council anyway.
Yes.
And so we've done our job as a committee because we're taking something back to council, which they asked us to look into it. And at that point, it's in their hands anyways. So I have no problem seconding it.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor duly moved and seconded by Warden French. Let's call the question. Have you got something scripted here before I call the question?
Ed, can I ask a question of clarification?
Yes, please.
Is this donation coming from this committee, or is this resolution asking county council to give the donation?
My understanding is that the recommendation is the motion is to recommend county council consider a donation of $10,000. So it won't be from the
Okay.
committee.
No, this committee
Okay.
doesn't have
Thank-
funds of its own.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't come out of our budget for next year for this committee?
I don't believe so because that budget hasn't been set yet.
Okay.
Again, it's just a recommendation for county consideration. And as
Okay.
Warden French has already pointed out, council sent it to the committee for consideration. We've discussed it. This is one particular action. Councilor Jiguer, you had some further points?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was a similar
Okay.
clarification because I do feel, so this committee, we've determined it doesn't fit the criteria. We don't have the budget. So therefore, as far as this committee is concerned, it's a moot point. I can reserve the rest of my comments for a discussion at council, I guess. But I would find it odd that we are fundraising ourselves at the county for various amenities. We are prepared to make a donation to another organization. But so that, so I have some reservation even in this committee taking something back to council that may not align with what council is currently considering and working on.
I agree with you. I have some reservations myself as well, but we'll let council make up that decision. If that's the view of the committee. Yeah.
Yeah,
more than-
I think you can certainly speak to your reservations at county.
Yep.
I think it doesn't hurt us to take it to the county and they can make the final decision, but I do believe, I feel strongly we should be offering some support.
Okay. Got something?
Maybe.
Okay.
Whereas at its meeting on July 12th, 2022, the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee considered the fundraising challenge for the Elmer and Malahide Museum and Archives capital campaign as suggested by the town of Elmer. And whereas this request for funding falls outside or does not meet the criteria of the established community grant program administered by the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee. Therefore, be it resolved that the Rural Initiatives and Planning Advisory Committee recommend that Elgin County Council provide a donation in support of the fundraising challenge for the Elmer and Malahide Museum and Archives capital campaign in the amount of $10,000.
Okay. Are you okay with that motion, Sally?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, and Warden French? Are we ready for the question then? That was a duck. Okay, all in favor then?
Yes.
1, 2,
Hear from Donna.
She's non-voting.
she's non-voting.
She's non-voting,
Yeah,
so it's a split.
I am not afraid to let council have its say, but I'm not in support of it either, but let's take it to council. I'm sorry. 3-2 or 3-1.
Motion is carried.
It carries. Okay, is there any other business? Nothing on my agenda? No correspondence? And the date of the next meeting will be at the call of the chair. So we're at the adjournment. Mover and seconder. Councillor French will move, Councillor Jaguar, Warden French will move, Councillor Jaguar will second. Be resolved that we now adjourn at 12:52 PM and meet again at time to be determined. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Donna.